morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, et bienvenue à la Conseil municipal pour la ville d'Ottawa.
Welcome to the Ottawa City Council meeting, 9th of November 2022.
Welcome our guests and family members here, and I believe there's some councillors-elect as well, and members of the media. For those who are able to, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. Good morning. As we pause for that moment of reflection, sadly, over the course of the last week or so, 4 of our great city leaders passed away. So, are we okay now? As I was mentioning, as we paid a moment of took a moment of personal reflection, we lost 4 great leaders from different fields. I just wanted to mark their passing. Joan Gullen, who was a social justice champion and pioneer for many, many decades. Denzel Doyle, one of the original high-tech giants in Canada. Frank Reed, an elected official, as well as a great sports leader with the Ottawa Rough Riders. And Greed Hale, who was a great philanthropist, as well as a role model for women and girls. All 4 contributed so much to our community, and we think of their families during this difficult time. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Gail Church for this end-of-term Mayor City Builder Award. So, Gail, if you'd like to come forward, along with Councillor Catherine McKenney. Welcome, Councillor. Hello again. Here, based on height. So please vise à récompenser des personnes qui font preuve.
This prize is designed to reward people who have committed to making our city a better place to live, and to thank them for their volunteer service.
The Capital Region as a financial professional and volunteer. She has been a strong advocate for more affordable housing, and she is recognized for her commitment to social justice. Since moving to Ottawa 40 years ago, she has been a leader in developing and supporting local and national organizations. In the 1980s, Gail became Manager of Finance and Administration at the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada, probably worked with Harvey for some time. Everyone knows Harvey. And played a vital role in bringing affordable community-controlled housing to 250,000 Canadians. Her calm and sensible approach, combined with her financial acumen, helped stabilize the operations of the organization during a period of rampant countrywide growth. As chair of the Ottawa Community Credit Union, Gail was instrumental in guiding its transition to CS Credit Union and later Alterna Savings. She served on the founding board of the directors of the Abowin Cooperative, a not-for-profit that provides safe and affordable housing to a diverse membership. The co-op was created by a group of LGBTQ2+ members to provide safer and secure housing for the gay and queer community, along with other minoritized groups for the betterment of our society. Putting her financial expertise at the service of her convictions, Gail was treasurer of the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation in the late 80s and 90s. She then became Director of Finance and Administration with Somerset West Community Health Centre, where she remained for 20 years. Gail embraced the mission of the centre with passion, and she worked steadfastly to rescue the health centre from near financial disaster. She is recognized for her impressive contributions to Community Health Centre and to the services provided to the broader community. In 2010, Gail co-founded the Funeral Cooperative of Ottawa and was a leading member of the board, where she worked to secure the delivery of affordable funeral services locally. And in 2017, she joined Cooperative Département des Jardins in Chinatown and was promptly elected treasurer. Throughout her life, Gail has rejected invitations to pursue a more lucrative business career, choosing instead to reserve her talents for her community. She's been a fierce advocate for more affordable housing, and her commitment to social justice has been prominent and unwavering. for your exceptional volunteerism, Gail, and your significant contribution to the community. It's my pleasure to present you, along with your Councillor McKenney, the Mayor's City Builder Award, and we thank you for your wonderful contributions. Félicitations. Voilà, we'll get a picture of it.
Thank you, Mayor Watson, for your kind words and for this honor. And good morning, councillors and citizens of Ottawa, friends and family. I'm a bit shocked at receiving this award, actually, because there are so many others in Ottawa doing splendid work with a lot more impact than I've been able to achieve. Despite the fact that I've been a part of a large group trying to provide affordable housing in Ottawa for some 35 years, we still have a serious homelessness problem, and affordability is beyond the reach of too many. Nevertheless, it's heartwarming to be recognized for my small contribution to these organizations that I've worked with. I've enjoyed all of them, whether they concerned housing or other issues. I guess if I've learned anything from the experience of being a volunteer in our community, it's that being a volunteer is really, really important. I highly recommend it, not only because these organizations need competent people, but also because it is very fulfilling when your work is appreciated, even if your efforts aren't always successful. Like me, you may be involved with groups that face serious challenges, I should say, but even those enhance your capacities, which you then can have more to give to share to other organizations in the future. Volunteer work broadens one's own experience as well as being helpful to others. So I challenge all of you to volunteer at an organization to enable yourself to express your passion and someone who values your contribution. Again, thank you very much, Mayor Watson. And thanks very much for those people who recommended me for this award. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Gail. It's great to have your friends and family with you here today. I now have the pleasure of presenting our final Mayor's City Builder Award for this term of council to Rochelle Lecour. I'd welcome Cumberland Ward Councillor Catherine Kitts to join us for the presentation and ask Rochelle to come forward. Bonjour, bienvenue. Nice to have your family with you as well. Here comes Councillor Kitts. Rochelle has been a passionate advocate and volunteer in her community for more than 14 years. Rochelle est une militante passionnée qui fait une bénévole dans sa communauté depuis plus de 14 ans. After retiring from the public service in 2000, Rochelle became involved in the Portobello South Community Development Association, which is now the Greater Avalon Community Association. She became its secretary in 2008 and has chaired the Community Association since 2018. Rochelle has been the voice of the association in advocating for major files in her community, and her efforts and those of her team reach far beyond Greater Avalon. She organized many community building events, including the local community barbecue and the Fête Franco-Ontarienne, organized as part of the Franco-Ontarian Day. She is also recognized for her passion and her efforts to improve the neighborhood through environmental initiatives. Elle a organisé de nombreux événements de développement communautaire dans le cadre du Jour des Franco-Ontariennes et des Franco-Ontariennes, dont le barbecue communautaire local.
She has organized, been responsible for the community Franco-Ontarian barbecue. And she's also recognized for her passion and her work locally.
Giselle Lalonde Public High School to allow students to plant vegetable gardens and fruit trees. Most recently, Rochelle worked with Councillor Kitts on efforts to save the Nance Forest at Avalon. In June of this year, City Council unanimously approved a land exchange with Regional Group to preserve this cherished urban forest in the Avalon neighborhood. Well done. This positive outcome would not have been possible without the tireless advocacy of the community led by the Greater Avalon Community Association and its president, Rochelle. Rochelle has also been instrumental in implementing many wonderful initiatives enjoyed by the community, including yoga in the park, the maintenance of 2 popular outdoor rinks, community garage sales, and cleaning the Capitol Awards. Her knowledge and experience in the neighborhood has ensured successful advocacy on behalf of the community association on development files and improved infrastructure in South Orleans. Her tireless advocacy on behalf of the community is a testament to her belief in creating a greener, more livable community. Ses efforts pour défendre les intérêts de sa communauté témoignent de son dévouement.
Her efforts to defend the interests of our community pay testimony to her devotion to the community. Through her volunteership and her contribution, Rachel shows exemplary commitment to her community.
To do and gives back to her community. And in recognition of your contributions to the community, it's my pleasure to present the Mayor's City Builder Award to you on behalf of your City Councillor, Catherine Kitts. Congratulations, félicitations.
I didn't realize there was that many accomplishments in 14 years, but I don't know where you got all the resumes from, but thank you so much, Catherine. So, Mr. Mayor, Monsieur le Maire, membres du Conseil,
Members of Council, especially Councillor Kitts, thank you for the honor that you've bestowed upon me today. In recognition for my work in the community, I'd like to share this honor with my family and my husband who are here with me today, and with the members of my community also, who have supported me in my projects, which have always been very demanding. After my retirement, I worked in the community, and I sat on the Community Association board, and this led me to be involved in various projects. One project was to preserve a forest. Another was to plant trees or to maintain skating rinks. I received a lot of help from my loved ones and from the community. I'd like to thank my family and my husband, especially my husband, who supported me and who has always been there to advise me and who have been very, very patient with me. Without them and without the help of my husband, I could not have done what I have done. I still have projects that I want to work on.
And to the councillors who supported the land transfer for the Northwoods. Thank you so much, everyone around the table. It's really appreciated. And we're going to do something really beautiful with that forest, I can promise you that. Next year, we hope to dedicate this 5-acre woodlot or forest as a healing forest, reconciliation/meditation center for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. A planning committee is already underway to preserve this little gem in the middle of our community for future generations. Best wishes to you, Mr. Mayor, on your future, and I hope on your retirement, I should say, and I hope it'll prove to be as rewarding as mine. Thank you, Catherine, and I wish you the best in this new term of office. Thank you to all the volunteers, especially, and organizations who worked relentlessly to make this city a wonderful place to live, work, shop, and play. I share this award with all the volunteers and everyone in the community that helped out with this, with all the accomplishments that we've done. Merci du fond du cœur.
Excellent, A roll call, please, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Luloff.
Présent.
Councillor Dudas. Councillor Harder. Councillor Curry. Here. Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh. Present. Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans. I'm here. Councillor Tierney.
Présent.
Conseiller Fleury.
Présent.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Ici.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
C'est Cloutier.
Présent.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Derouse.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Meehan. Here. Councillor Hubley. Mayor Watson.
You see?
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès-verbaux pour le 5 octobre 2022. Carried, adopté.
Carried.
A declaration of interest, including those originally arising from prior meetings, déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. Councillor Shirelli.
I, Councillor Rick Shirelli, declare a direct pecuniary interest in the following.
You're on mute.
That's right. No, it shouldn't be. Can you hear me? Okay. I, Councillor Rick Shirelli,
Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor. I believe we can't hear you.
I'm not on mute.
Can we write? I need to log in permissions. Sometimes, like, we need to.
Councillor, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think there's obviously a technical glitch that we can't hear you. So we can proceed. The deputy clerk has suggested we continue with the rest of the business. And when you get your volume corrected, then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Okay, so you should leave and come back because you're gonna have to give permission to Google to use your audio.
Yeah, so
I think that's what's
you have to
missing.
leave the menu.
So I think we're going to have to come back to you. So when you do get volume, keep testing it. And when we hear you, we'll go back to you.
Say no.
Oh, just a moment, Deputy Clerk.
If we could ask another member of staff who has joined virtually to please test their microphone. There may be an issue with the connection with the room.
You should leave. You have to leave and then-
I can't leave.
Mr. Mayor, if you would indulge us a brief recess, we believe that the audio issue is in the council chambers.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute recess and try to resolve the problem. Thank you.
Mute?
Click it, yeah.
Oops.
everyone's attention, members of staff, membres du personnel. Okay, so declaration of interest, including those originally rising from prior meetings. Déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. Councillor Shirelli, please.
I, Councillor Rick Shirelli, declare a potential direct pecuniary interest in the following matter to be considered at City Council meeting November 9th, 2022. Item 12.1, report to Council on inquiry respecting the conduct of Councillor Shirelli.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other conflicts of interest to declare? AMO and other communications as presented.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to hold item 9.1, families and motels.
Sorry, which one?
9.1.
Okay. Deputy Clerk, what is required to lift something from response to inquiries?
Ordinarily, when a matter is listed as a communication on the council agenda, suspension of the rules is required to lift it for discussion.
Okay, on suspension, carried. Councillor Brockington.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, the item on Herdman Station, can I just have clarity that this will also come up at the next Transit Commission meeting?
The Herdman Station issue from staff, can we get a confirmation it'll be at the next Transit Commission meeting?
Like rather than hold it here, I can hold it at Transit Commission. Is that correct?
The GM is saying yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, Councillor, is it a long discussion on this item, or could we? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and sorry for holding this item. It was an item that came to council that was at CPS, and unfortunately, we ran out of time that meeting, so that's where it's ending up. And I apologize for members of council for holding the item. Question to Donna on this matter. There are two areas that I'm interested for. I think is important for council to be aware. So. There was a tragic death of a 6-year-old in one of the motels on Montreal Road. I just want to understand the inquiry response provides resources that are available, and I'm not denying those relating to family members that we put in those hotels. I'm just curious to understand a bit better. Best practices, would we not want a permanent city staff or someone from a social services agency in those spaces, particularly when there are a lot of families? So I'm just seeking a bit of clarity on, I find the response is a little, it details what we have in place, and I'm not challenging that. I'm more curious about hindsight, if we could look at providing more on-site support proactively.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the inquiry response speaks to the things that we've been doing through the pandemic. And I think what we've experienced through the COVID pandemic, particularly for families and singles, is increasing needs in our community for temporary housing. So many of the things that we have had to put in place, have been to respond to this temporary nature. As we are coming out of the pandemic, we really are starting to relook at the supports and services that we need in order to be able to support, and the appropriate supports that we need for the city in the long term around our emergency shelter and our emergency housing needs. Our transition plan that council approved in the spring was really about transitioning out of COVID and how do we move out of our temporary emergency situations, because as you're aware, we're still running a number of temporary measures. So as we look at that and move forward, the existing temporary measures that are reported in the memo and that we'll continue to think about as we move into the future, we are looking at how do we sustain that in the longer term, looking at potentially better accommodations, better supports, but then better wraparound supports with our community to do that.
Okay. And lastly, I know it is a conversation that I've had with the housing director, trying to alert the province of the needs for supportive housing pilot projects for families here in Ottawa. I'm just curious to see if we've heard back from the province on our interest for some funding there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have written to the province for the extension of funding into the new year around our social service relief fund, or extending of temporary measures and measures that we need in the city around that response. We've had initial conversations with the ministry administration staff on that need and have detailed that need. There's been a number of tables that have been convened provincially around the needs coming out of COVID, particularly around families and singles experiencing homelessness, but we have not at this point had any direct confirmation of funding to the City of Ottawa.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That completes. Thank you, Don.
Great, thank you. Regrets, Councillor Dudas and Harder advised they would be absent from the City Council meeting of November 9th, 2022. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation de rapport. Councillor Curry, please, seconded by Councillor Eglai.
That the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 35, Built Heritage Subcommittee Report 30A, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 41, Planning Committee Report 69, and the reports from the City Clerk entitled Status Update, Council Inquiries and Motions for the period ending November 4th, 2022, and Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act, explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of October 5th, 2022, be received and considered, and that council suspend the notice requirement in subsection 29, subsection 6 of the procedure bylaw to consider the Integrity Commissioner's report entitled Report to Council on an Inquiry Respecting the Conduct of Councillor Shirelli at its meeting on November 9th, 2022.
On the motion, as presented, carried, adopté. Item 12, Integrity Commissioner, Commissaire à l'Intégrité, report to Council on an inquiry respecting the conduct of Councillor Shirelli. Rapport au Conseil sur les enquêtes concernant la conduite de conseiller Shirelli. The Integrity Commissioner is here with us today, I believe. Yes, thank you. Available for questions. And we have a motion by Councillor Kavanaugh, seconded by Councillor Curry, please. Councillor Kavanaugh, I'd like to introduce the motion.
Whereas on July 15th, 2020, Council considered the first Integrity Commissioners.
Councillor, if you can speak a little closer to the microphone, it's very difficult to hear.
Whereas on July 15th, 2020, Council considered the first Integrity Commissioner's report titled Reports to Council on an Inquiry Respecting Conduct of Councillor Shirelli, and approved the suspension of the remuneration paid to Councillor Shirelli in respect of his services as a member of Council for a total of 270 days due to contraventions of Section 4 and Section 7 of the Code of Conduct for members of Council. And whereas on August 26, 2020, Council approved Motion 38-4, directing the city's Chief Financial Officer to invest the total of the 2020-2021 remuneration being suspended from Councillor Shirelli, amounting to $79,300, to be allocated to community organizations that support survivors of domestic violence and/or sexual assault in consultation with the General Manager of Community and Social Services. And whereas on December 22nd, 2021, the Divisional Court set aside Council's decision with regards to the first Integrity Commissioner's report. However, the court itself imposed the same penalty of 270 days suspension of remuneration on Councillor Shirelli. And whereas on November 25th, 2020, Council considered and approved recommendations set out in the Integrity Commissioner's second report titled Report to Council on an Inquiry Respecting the Conduct of Councillor Shirelli, and approved Motion 44-4, directing the city's Chief Financial Officer invest the total of Councillor Shirelli's further 180 days of suspension of remuneration for 2021 in the same manner as Motion 38-4, amounting to $52,900. And whereas, as a result of these motions, a total of $132,200 was equally divided and paid out to the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women, Octiva, which, by the way, was founded by the late Joan Gullen, and the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition, through a process administered by Community and Social Services. And whereas the Integrity Commissioner, in her report entitled Report to Council on an Inquiry Respecting the Conduct of Councillor Shirelli, has found that Councillor Shirelli has contravened sections 4 and 7 of the Code of Conduct for members of council and has recommended council suspend the remuneration to be paid to the respondent in respect of his service as a member of council for 90 days. And whereas the 2018-2022 term of council ends on November 14th, 2022, and Councillor Shirelli will not be returning to council for the 2022-2026 term. And whereas members of council are eligible for a transition assistance allowance as recommended by the Citizens Task Force on Council Remuneration Report and as amended through the approval of the 2010-2014 midterm governance review, which is paid to a member upon leaving office at the end of the term, whether by defeat or retirement, equivalent to 1 month's pay for each consecutive year served on Ottawa City Council to a maximum of 6 months, and which is reported to council as part of elected officials' remuneration in accordance with Section 284 of the Municipal Act 2001. Therefore, be it resolved that the suspension of remuneration for Councillor Shirelli commence effective November 9th, 2022, to be made up of the member's salary to be paid to the end of the term of council, with the remaining balance to be deducted from the transition assistance allowance, representing a combined total of 90 days worth of suspended remuneration. And be further resolved that council approve that the city's chief financial officer be directed to consult with the general manager of Community and Social Services and invest in a similar manner the total remaining remuneration being suspended from member of council due to the contraventions of Section 4 and Section 7 of the Code of Conduct to community organization that supports survivors of domestic violence and or sexual assault, and report back to council via a memorandum on the final amounts donated. Mr. Mayor, this motion will bring closure to a dark page in the life of the City of Ottawa and this council. The recommendation ensures that Councillor Shirelli cannot benefit from a position of trust he violated through the transition assistance allowance. Further monies that would have gone to Councillor Shirelli from this fund will be appropriately directed to organizations supporting women and people who have suffered gender-based silencing and harassment. As a city, we're moving forward. We have improved our internal policies and practices to increase transparency, prevent and address gender-based harassment in our workplace. By approving this motion, we can send a further message to the community that it matters to us that all workplaces across the city are safe and free of discrimination as well. Thank you.
Councillor Fleury, please, questions or comments?
Monsieur le Maire, mes questions sont au commissaire.
My questions are to the Commissioner of Integrity. Can't see her now. Yes. First, Mrs. Shepherd, thank you. Thank you so much for your report. It is very uncomfortable to read, but it recognizes the importance of your role, of your review, and of the resources that you have to do your work. I don't know if my question should be asked to you or to the city clerk, but we have an ex-elected rep, Stephen Blais, who proposed a provincial legislation. And during the debate, the provincial government said that the City Council of Ottawa wanted to adopt adequate measures on that issue. So it is important for us to have all of the information and all of the tools that would be possible for this term. You raised some financial issues, but the question is that can we withdraw this member with the authority that we have here at the council, the authority that is given to us by the province? Do we have the power to withdraw this member from our table? If yes, how? And if no, why? Honestly, Yeah. It's up to me to make recommendations. But it is up to the city clerk to answer your questions.
That council will decide to impose.
Mr. Mayor, do you want me to repeat my question to city clerk? It may be more appropriate for city clerk. Mr. Mayor, the clerk can add, yes, but if I understood the question, is if the city of Ottawa has any power to withdraw a member of council because of an inquiry.
Ottawa has the power to remove a member of council from office currently, and I believe the answer to that question is no.
And so are we aware? I know this is getting into provincial politics, and I'm sorry, but the minister during that debate on Councillor Blaise bill did speak to the city of Ottawa having the necessary tools to remove a member of council. So is that something under the privilege of Parliament at Queen's Park, or is this something that we really need to look in legal terms from our bylaws, from our code of conduct? Is there something that this council has not done relating to removing this member from this council table?
Mayor, it's the city solicitor. I can respond to that. There is nothing in the Municipal Act as it stands today that would allow a municipal council to remove or revoke the appointment of one of its own members. That authority resides with the provincial government. The provincial municipalities are creatures of provincial statute. It is not open to a municipal council through a code of conduct or anything like that. With respect to the penalties that a municipal council can impose, it is limited in that regard to either a reprimand or a suspension of the remuneration of up to 90 days. Those are the limits of a municipal council's authority in that regard.
Have we, following that debate that happened provincially that would have impact on this situation, have we communicated to the respective ministries provincially on what we believe our authority is for clarification from them? Like, are we have a set of authorities, and the province doesn't seem to understand some of those limits, or believes maybe we have other tools.
Well, maybe I could just ask, I know Minister Clark and an associate minister held a series of roundtable discussions on this item, and they assured us that there would be action, but unfortunately the election came about, there was no action, and MPP Blais has reintroduced the bill. I think this is for the third time. We did as a council, I believe, stand to be corrected, but I know it was at least a letter and or a resolution from council asking for an ability to remove a member for, the kind of behavior we saw with Mr. Shirelli.
Okay. So again, in the provincial hands, Mr. Mayor, in your...
Unfortunately, the ball is in the court of the provincial government. They have the authority to make the amendment. They seemed quite keen on it about a year ago, and I hope their interest is such that they would support MPP Blais' bill, and if not, bring forward a government bill, which can go through the process a lot faster.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Merci. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you very much. Well, to me, reading this report, these allegations are extremely serious. They seem criminal in nature to me. So I guess my question is, have you considered the criminal nature of these charges or these allegations, and is it your intention to refer this report to police for investigation?
Well, as my report indicates, the previous commissioner had referred something.
Can you speak into the mic? I'm having trouble hearing you.
As a previous commissioner had, my report indicates, the previous commissioner had sent something over to the police. I couldn't proceed until the police had finalized, which is what I did. I have no information on what happened with the police. I mean, their matters to look into it as something of a crime, whereas I'm looking at the breach of the code. So I've taken the action as my report indicates.
So it would be up to the police to pursue criminal charges or in a criminal investigation.
Well, as my report indicates, in order to proceed, I needed to have confirmation that the police were not looking at something, which is what I did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deans. Councillor Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the question is, one of the recommendations you made was a requirement for a written or a verbal apology. Are there any repercussions, or do you retain any authority over the councillor if he doesn't go forward and apologize in either of those forms?
Well, as per the Municipal Act, my ability is to provide recommendations. It's up to council to decide on this as decision maker on the sanctions. So I think I would have to defer to the city solicitor to respond to the rest of that question as to whether I can hold him.
Mr. Mayor, as the Integrity Commissioner has indicated, it is the job of the Integrity Commissioner to determine whether there's been a breach. It is the job of council to determine what the appropriate penalty is in that regard. As I say, with respect to penalties, council's ability is limited. A council can take certain remedial actions. That said, council's ability to deal with a contravention of the code of conduct by a city member would presumably expire with the end of the term.
Okay, that's the answer I expected. It's not an answer I think we all like, but it's the answer I expected, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we have a motion before us by Councillor Kavanaugh, seconded by Councillor Curry. Carried?
Carried.
Adopté?
Carried.
And the report as amended?
Carried.
Carried. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is item 13, Greffier Municipal, status update, council inquiries received. Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee report number 35, rapport numéro 35 du Comité de l'Agriculture et des Affaires Rurales, 770 Copeland Road, 7700 Chemin Copeland. Carried. FEDCO, report number 41, rapport numéro 41 du Comité des Finances et de Développement économique, 2022 mid-year procurement year in review. Councillor Cloutier has a technical amendment, seconded by Councillor Derouz, please. Councillor Cloutier.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Whereas the report from the Chief Procurement Officer entitled 2022 Mid-Year Procurement Year in Review was received at Finance Economic Development Committee on November 1st and is before Council for information, whereas in the report to FEDCO, some columns in document 1, delegation of authority contracts for the period of January to June 2022 were unintentionally omitted, and a corrected document was published with the city council agenda. Therefore, be it resolved, the council replace document 1 of the report with the revised document 1 issued with the council agenda.
So on the motion, carried. On the item as amended, carried. Item 15.2, mise à jour enquête publique sur le réseau de transport en commun par train léger.
Public inquiry on the light rail transit system.
Planning Committee report number 69, rapport numéro 69 du Comité de l'Urbanisme, zoning bylaw amendment 2006-2020-2026 Scott Street and 314 and 318 Athlone Avenue. 2006 26 sur la rue Scott et 314 et 318 Avenue Athlone. Carried. Item 16.2, zoning bylaw amendment 951 Gladstone Avenue and 145 Loretta Avenue North. Councillor Leeper has a motion, seconded by Councillor Brockington, that I believe It's a good compromise for the community.
Yeah, the two parties have been negotiating the noise mitigation measures that would be required of CLV. They did not have that agreement in place as of the planning committee meeting. However, they have mostly executed an agreement now. I'm not going to read the entire whereases, but there is one outstanding piece of a future project to which they're not sure whether or not the noise requirements are going to be applicable. So both parties have agreed that it's still appropriate to put a holding condition on it to the effect of, therefore be it resolved that with respect to the report, council replace document 1 zoning map and document 2 details of recommended zoning with the revised versions enclosed. Therefore be it resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417. And my thanks go to the parties and to city staff for making sure that was tidied away before today.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the amendment? On the amendment, it's presented by Councillor Leeper, seconded by Councillor Brockington. Carried. On the report as amended, carried. Item 16.3, zoning bylaw amendment 1111 Prince of Wales Drive, modification de règlement de zonage 1111 Promenade Prince of Wales. Carried. Item 16.4, zoning bylaw amendment 3437 Innes Road, modification de règlement de zonage 3437 Chemin Innes. Carried. Zoning bylaw amendment 1015 Tweedle Road, modification de règlement de zonage 1015 Chemin Tweedle. Councillor Menard has a motion, seconded by Councillor Lulaw. Councillor Menard, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. I had some concerns about this at Planning Committee and had raised some questions there, and subsequently spoke with the RVCA as well as city environment staff, just given our changing climate and the concerns around flooding in this area, as well as some of the hazard risk assessment when it comes to landslides. And so city environment staff got back to me, specifically, Nick Stowe and Geraldine Wildman, who I have a lot of trust for, and talked about the process of that 120-meter area that would trigger two things. One is the preparation of an environmental impact study to demonstrate that there'd be no negative impact. And the second is an application to the Conservation Authority regulations. And so I understand that the city and our conservation authorities rarely ask for that 120 setback. And typically in the urban areas, it's 30 to 50 meters. In this case, the RVCA recommended a setback of 50 meters. To match the setback of the Bridgel site to the east, but they were prepared to issue a permit for a smaller setback. Some of the naturalization and the habitat restoration may lie within the 100-year floodplain, as we've seen in pictures. Mr. Stowe looked closely at the photographs provided by cafes, as did we all at that committee meeting, and based on where that fill was from that 2004. It looked like it was at that 1 in 100-year flood line. The disturbance to wildlife is also a concern. Those most sensitive species around turtles and wetland birds. And I think the naturalization and habitat restoration should be important here in providing a buffer. RVCA did raise some concerns with me, which is where this motion comes from. And it's about putting more of a hold on the development until the RVCA can be fully satisfied that we're doing what we can on some of those hazard risk assessments, and city staff have worked productively on this motion. So I'll read it out and hope we can support it today. So whereas public concerns have been raised about potential environmental, flooding, and landslide hazard risks associated with the development of 1015 Tweddle Road, and whereas in accordance with the RVCA requirements, the applicant has undertaken a third-party landslide hazard risk assessment and an evaluation of group risk within its study, whereby the RVCA's landslide hazard risk assessment peer reviewer has noted some issues with methodology. Whereas the RVCA believes that the study should reflect appropriate methodology as outlined by its reviewer, and whereas the original concept reviewed for the site had 3 towers and a 4th tower was added without this risk assessment review, and this change in scope should be accounted for in the risk assessments, particularly given the fill and soil conditions identified. And whereas the city has agreed that the update can be completed prior to site plan control approval, whereas the applicant is aware that deferring the completion of the study to site plan control review may cause changes to the design concept, which they are willing to assume because the design is subject to change. And whereas numerous stakeholders want added assurance from the city that the study update will be completed, therefore be it resolved that Council, 1, amend the holding symbol condition to require prior to the lifting of the holding symbol, A, that the landslide hazard risk assessment be updated to the satisfaction of the RVCA to reflect accepted methodology for group risk assessment, and B, a review be undertaken of whether the site's soil conditions and environmental risks identified can accommodate 4 towers, which would also require the purchase of remnant right away from the city should a 4th building be pursued, and 2, direct staff to continue working with the applicant to consider the application of enhanced mitigation measures in recognition of potential future climate change related events and flooding. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Luloff, please.
I just want to thank my council colleague for his engagement on this file and for working with me on some of the concerns that we've been hearing in the community. Before we vote on this item, I just want to set the record straight on a couple of things. I think a lot of us have received quite a few emails about this particular site, a lot of it containing much misinformation. Staff have set a very high bar for this application, despite the fact that zoning was requested was to bring the property in line with the official plan and the Orleans secondary plan, the latter of which, by the way, was passed unanimously by this council. And this specific piece of property was identified in the secondary plan for this type of development. This application has been ongoing for over 2 years. Geotechnical, slope stability, and environmental studies were completed and then double peer reviewed at the applicant's cost. Since the application was submitted, I've shared all of the community's comments and concerns with the application of city staff, urging that these concerns be addressed. And in fact, I went back and looked, and I believe it was January 2020 was the first time that I posted about this specific site. No buildings have been approved today or will be approved today should this pass, and no buildings will be approved until site plan review. And should they be approved, it will be because the applicant has met or exceeded the requirements set forth by legislation and the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, bolstered by Councillor Menard and my motion today. A large portion of this lot is owned by the applicant is being rezoned as environmentally protected. Only the area that sits outside of the floodplain, and as we've been assured by staff, the difference between a 1 in 100 floodplain and the 1 in 350 floodplain here is negligible. Only this area that has been demonstrated to be developable will be considered. There's still further study to be done before any actual building is approved. And with respect to distance, development site alterations will not be permitted within the 120 meters of the boundary of significant wetland unless the environmental impact statement demonstrates that there will be no negative impacts to the wetland or its ecological function. But in this case, an environmental impact statement was completed to fulfill requirements of the provincial policy statement, the city's official plan policies, and associated provincial regulations. The study verified the provincially significant wetland boundaries and established development limits as 30 meters from significant wetlands. These reports have been reviewed and accepted by staff and the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. Now, it's also important to note about this site that the land that is here for future development sits upon heavily contaminated land by the salt plant across the street. We are the ones that are contaminating this land, and this is going to have to be remediated before any development continues. The applicants will be remediating this mess at their own cost, leaving it in better condition than when it was purchased, and returning the northern portion of the site to its natural state by removing invasive species and planting natural local species. Just wanted to set the record straight on a couple of items there. I really appreciate Council's attention. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate the local councillor's intervention and added context, because I appreciate that. And I appreciate the motion before us today from Councillor Menard, because I do think this makes the whole thing better. I do want to see this development happen, but similar to colleagues at Planning Committee, I do believe the delegations brought up some legitimate concerns, and one of which was flooding, the context of flooding and flood risk. So I just wanted to ask, I wasn't positive if a member of the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority would be here today to speak to this item, or whether staff will just be speaking, but I want to talk about flood risk in particular. Can staff take council through their work and reassure us that the flood risk that exists, that members of the community have raised repeatedly, has been addressed, and how has it been addressed? Because obviously we do not want to see a major development built here and then be submerged the next time we have a significant fresh melt in the spring. We did see pictures, I believe, in this immediate vicinity of the land submerged. We've had 2 significant floods in the last few years, 2017 and 19. So give us assurances the process that staff goes through, particularly to mitigate flood risk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. In terms of the analysis, I think the ward councillor gave a very good outline of the 2-year process, the interactions with the Conservation Authority, and the further resiliency we're adding in through this motion in terms of what will happen prior to site plan approval. Certainly, it's as noted is outside of the regulatory floodplain. It will be flood-proofed. We do test developments for the 1 to 350 year events, which, as we heard, is a very negligible difference here. If you require further detail, I can see if either Mr. Stowe or Mr. Moody are online to support.
One thing I'll just ask to follow up, Councillor Menard's motion talked about landslide hazard. And the second part was talking about a further assessment of the site, soil conditions, and environmental risks. Will that cover off, or will there be any additional work done with respect to flooding, or is environmental risk covering other matters?
Through the chair, the work that's going to be done on the landslide risk analysis will look at the geotechnical framework. With respect to the flood risk.
Sorry, there seems to be a problem with a lot of the microphones, or else I'm going hard of hearing. Can you speak louder, please?
Certainly, Chair. The work that will be done on the landslide risk analysis will be focused on the geotechnical parameters of the site. With respect to the flood risk analysis, we are quite comfortable, and to add additional context to some of the comments that have been made, the current 1 in 100 year flood line is at an elevation of approximately 45 meters. The existing site where the development is going to be taking place today is at about 51 meters, and there will be a further elevation increase to the site as they build up to provide positive drainage to the road of an additional approximately 3 meters. So we're very close to 9 meters, or roughly, for those of us that work in feet, 30 feet above the existing floodplain line. So we are comfortable that the flood risk analysis for the site itself is minimal, and the focus going forward with respect to that landslide risk analysis will be focused on the geotechnical parameters.
Thank you. That's helpful. And can you just inform us what the Conservation Authority's role was with respect to this application? Particularly on flooding, what do they assess with respect to risks, and what was their ultimate conclusion following their assessment?
Chair, I think we have representation from the Conservation Authority either in the room or online if they want to add additional detail, but the Conservation Authority participates in our reviews on sites like this in a number of different perspectives. They do review the impact to the environment. With respect to flooding specifically, they undertake a review to determine how it relates to the floodplain and where that flood risk could be. They are the regulator of the hazard with respect to floodplain and looking at setbacks and things of that nature. So they have reviewed it. They share our opinion that the development does not present a flood risk, and that it's suitable for recommendation to move forward.
Okay, finally, Mr. Mayor, I obviously do not want to support any type of application that would put a development or even human life at risk for flooding or any other reason. And to me, that was one of the main concerns that members of the community raised throughout this process, that at least I read and I heard. And so once again, is it staff's recommendation that the flood risk here is minimal and will be addressed through the site plan and the construction process?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, so we have a motion by Councillor Menard, second by Councillor Luloff. Carried. On the motion as amended, carried.
I'll dissent, Mr. Mayor.
Dissent by Councillor King. Zoning bylaw amendment 56 Capilano Drive, modification de règlement de zonage 56 Promenade Capilano.
Hold, Mr. Mayor. I have a very brief comment.
You want to do, if it's brief, we'll.
Yeah, I just can't tell members of council how good this project is. So if you have any hesitation at all about voting for it, I urge you to vote for it. It's a supportive, affordable housing development in partnership with Salis. It fills a huge gap in the city, and I'll leave it at that. It's a wonderful project, and I hope to support it.
On the report, carried. Update.
Sure.
Item 16.7, modification de règlement de zonage 25 Croissant Fair Oaks.
Hold that. I have a longer rant on that, though, Mr. Mayor.
We'll come back to that one. Item 16.8, Greenfield Residential Land Supply mid-2021 update. Stock de terrain résidentiel en zone verte, mise à jour de mini-année 2021. Received. Bulk consent agenda. Councillor McKenney has an amendment, a technical amendment for item 17.4.1. Seconded by Councillor Gower.
Seconded by Councillor Gower. Whereas report ACS 2022 PIE PS 0129, the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa's official plan and the City of Ottawa's zoning bylaw to permit the development of 31 and 36-story mixed-use buildings. And whereas the Planning Committee carried the report on 27th of October 2022, whereas the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing issued a notice of decision on the 4th of December 2022, approving an amended version of the City of Ottawa's new official plan. And whereas the City of Ottawa's new official plan is amended by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, entered into force and replaced by the City of Ottawa's previous official plan on November 4th, 2022. Therefore, be it resolved that Council amend the Planning Committee report 69 item 1 official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment 665 Albert Street by replacing the text of the committee recommendations with the following text. 1, approve an amendment to the West Downtown Core secondary plan in volume 2A of the official plan as detailed in document 3. 2, approve an amendment to the zoning bylaw bylaw 2008-250 for 665 Albert Street as shown in document 4 to permit 2 mixed-use buildings with heights up to 36 stories as detailed in document 5 and 6, and 2, renaming document 3 details of the recommended official plan amendment, new official plan to document 3 details of recommended official plan amendment, and replacing the text new official plan with the text official plan wherever it appears in document 3, and therefore be it resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act. Thank you. We could have done it. You could have.
Hey, on the motion, carried. On the report as amended. It's a real zinger. It's a great way to on the item as amended, carried. Does anyone else wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda? On the bulk consent agenda as presented, carried. We're going back to the last, the only item that was held, zoning bylaw amendment 25 Fair Oaks Crescent. Councillor Eglai, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and as promised, I have a slightly longer rant on this one. Whereas I urged you to vote in favor of the Capilano project, I very much urge you not to vote in favor of this project. And it's not because I don't like intensification. It's not because my community doesn't like intensification. But in this particular location, it's too much too soon. The basis of, from a planning perspective for this particular project is that it is well situated for transit because LRT is coming. This is LRT stage 3. This is a project that's not remotely even funded at this point, let alone built. We've just found that there is a delay in the opening of stage 2, which is going to put stage 3 even further behind. But if we approve this today, this will get built. This will get built probably within the next year to 18 months. And people are going to be living there on the fantasy that they're not going to need cars. and therefore there's very limited parking. There's 3 parking spots for 6 units that are replacing one home. To me, a 3-to-1 ratio intensification would have been more than enough, and there would have been parking for each of the units. Whether that's adequate parking or not out in my area, in a situation where the closest grocery store is about a 30-minute walk, and there's one main bus that goes through the community that runs not bad at rush hour, but during the day the service is once a half hour. So there's promise for this location, but I truly believe now is not the time. The community raised a number of concerns about problems they have already with on-street parking around snow removal every year, around the safety of children playing on the street. We put 6 units in there where there was 1 in that part of town with that sort of bus service and LRT on its way, but not there for probably 10 years. What you're doing is creating a scenario where you might well have, if couples rent each of those units, you could have 12 cars and 3 spots. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just speaking the reality of it. So I think this project would have been more palatable to the community had it been a 3-for-1 swap. I think it would have been more palatable if there had been parking, a little bit more parking in place to help people transition, if you will, until LRT arises. I thought of a number of ways to deal with this today, and I thank Don Herwire for the discussions that I had with him and Tim Mark. Everything from doing what I'm doing now, asking you not to vote for the project at all, to possibly bringing a motion asking you to put a holding provision saying approve it, but don't allow a building permit until LRT is funded. Staff were not thrilled with that option, but we talked it through, and I thank them for that. And frankly, it's staff's just doing their job. They're working with the tools that we gave them. We told them 1 parking spot per unit, and you don't have to give any parking for the secondary units. That's the authority we gave them. They're working within that authority, and the applicant is working within that framework. But as I said to Mr. Herwire this morning, I said, you know, that might work in some parts of the city. It doesn't work in this part of the city at this point in time with the existing transit service. It simply doesn't. So I'm left with the nuclear option, really, which is to ask you not to vote for this. Some of you followed that request at planning, and I thank those of you that did, and I hope you continue to carry that vote through today. And for those that weren't at planning, I would ask for you to vote against this. And please keep in mind that this is one of the last infill developments you might likely vote on in this regard. If the provincial legislation passes, these are going to be popping up all over the city, in everybody's neighborhood, and you'll have no say at all, no control whatsoever in how that's going to happen. You have some control in these circumstances. This is a project that, as I say, is not a bad project, but it's a project too early and a project too much at this point in time. So on behalf of my residents, who many of who signed a petition which was filed with the city, and you will have seen, who showed up in large numbers at the community meeting, our job sometimes is to say no, despite staff's best efforts, and to respond to what we're hearing from the community. And again, nobody is saying it's a bad project, saying it's a project before its time, if you will. So I would ask you not to support it this morning. And I'm hoping for, like my colleague, for the last motion, Councillor McKenney got a win. I'm hoping the same thing can happen today. I don't know that it will, but I hope that it will. And I just ask you to consider what I've said before you vote. Thank you.
Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do appreciate my colleagues' words this morning and his interventions on behalf of his community. I appreciate that. This week, I spoke with a developer who's kicking the tires right across the street. Councillor Eagle Eye and I are geographic neighbors. 17 units, no parking, in a neighborhood very similar to his. And so I think the planning merits speak for themselves. I think if we're just going to look at this from a planning argument, it makes sense. But I think what the community's concerns about are once these developments are built, the ramifications within existing communities, and that can't be ignored. And so that's the dilemma that we have with infill and what's coming with all the changes that we've seen lately from the provinces. There will be much more infill development, and communities not aware of this freight train that's coming. And we hear that through Councillor Aglai today. So to staff, what options did you look at for parking in particular? Are you simply saying, well, this meets the minimum requirement, therefore there's nothing else we can force? What other options may exist to help this particular case?
Thank you for the question. The file lead, Allison Hamlin, is online and she can respond to those details.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm the manager of Development Review West. We looked at this. It was understood to be quite controversial within the community, but it is 3 townhouse dwellings within an R3 zone. The relief that's requested here does not relate to parking. Parking is required only for the units, not for the secondary dwelling units. So in answer to the question, yes, it meets the parking requirements.
Okay, so I mean, I supported the staff recommendation at committee. I will do so again today. I think the infill itself is reasonable. I acknowledge the local councillor raising issues on behalf of his community. But from a planning merit perspective, I think this is a reasonable application to approve. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Moffat.
Thanks. My colleague, Councillor Meehan, is not on Zoom right now, so I raised my hand for her.
Is that allowed?
Yep, Councillor Meehan.
Okay. Thank you very much. This topic of parking is one of particular interest to me. I've been fighting the parking formula in the suburbs for quite some time. And I have to say, I don't agree with allowing this development to go ahead, because right now we are creating parking lots. With every home that we're building in the suburbs right now, we are creating a parking lot with diminished size of driveways, decreased setbacks. We are creating areas where children cannot play. And I see this as going to be exacerbated if we continue to go forward. Intensification is going to create more parking along streets and more conflict. Right now, we are seeing, we couldn't have anticipated what happens with remote learning and people working from home. Our suburbs, while the Building Better Suburbs plan was great in intent, what has happened since with the pandemic is that we are seeing more people, 2 people working from home, and often because we have an affordability crisis in the city, young people are not leaving home. In many of these communities, they do not have transit, so we are seeing sometimes 2, 3, 4 cars where there's barely room for 1. So this is one of the biggest headaches, I think, for people in the suburbs right now. There are neighbor conflicts. Bylaw is called out continually, and we have a difficult time getting plows through, ambulances in some instances. I understand philosophically that we have to have a parking formula, but that parking formula does not work currently with the state of our world, in the state of our city. It's going to be a long time before we have community bus routes that can answer or to meet the requirements of people who have to go many other places than just downtown. So I will not vote in favor of this development. While it might make sense, it doesn't make sense. We need those homes, but what we are doing is handicapping people who are going to move in, and also handicapping people who already live in the neighborhood. So if we continue to follow the parking formula as is, as we continue to develop in the city with intensification and the lack of money for OC Transport, we are creating places where people do not want to live. I see it in my own communities. It has been one of the fights I've been having with City Hall. And I can tell you, and Mr. Mayor, when you came out to visit in my community, I talked to you about high rises that are going in without a parking spot for each and every unit. And I said, what's going to happen is people are going to be parking on the street because the busing and the transit doesn't give the people what they require. And that's specifically what's happened. If you talk to the snowplow operators and the head of operations, this is increasingly a major problem in our residential communities. So I support Councillor Eglai's request today, and I appeal to planning staff to take a serious look at what we're allowing to happen in our suburbs. I don't want to see more cars on the road, but people are going to have cars if we don't have the transit. So we can't have both, folks. So let's try to plan communities that are more responsive to the needs of the people who have to buy those residential homes. And I will take this opportunity to thank everybody. I've enjoyed my 4 years term on council, and this is the last time I'll be speaking. So thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leeper, please.
Thank you very much. You know, this is a backdoor way, I think, to oppose intensification. Most of our city is not within walking distance of a transit station. And one of the reasons why I voted against the official plan was because I was cynical that this council would embrace intensification equitably across the city. And these are the kinds of justifications for refusing gentle densification outside of the downtown core that I and residents of Kitchissippi Ward are largely expecting to continue to see, such that intensification happens in Kitchissippi, it happens in Capital, and it doesn't happen to the same extent everywhere else. Ultimately, if this council wants secondary units to require parking, change the policy. I cannot imagine that when the developer at this proposed site appeals this to the Ontario Land Tribunal to say, why am I being refused slightly larger rear or smaller rear yard setbacks and other performance standards, that the OLT is going to give this very much consideration at all. The planning decision that we need to make is on the performance standards. The planning decision here is not, are we going to approve a development that doesn't have as many parking spots as it has units? And the reason that's not a decision is because this council has said that secondary dwelling units, apartments, don't require a parking spot. This is a really simple open and shut case at the Ontario Land Tribunal. Refusing it today just downloads a politically difficult decision to the tribunal instead of making it ourselves. If we're not going to require parking of apartments, of those secondary dwelling units, then we have to defend the choice we've made on a policy basis rather than making the tribunal do it for us. So I'm certainly going to be supporting this development. This is the kind of gentle densification that everyone around this table has been talking about for several years now. And it is disappointing to me that council might be willing to refuse a simple addition of 3 units with apartments in one neighborhood, even on the same day as without blinking an eye. We've approved something like 130 floors of new residential development, much of which is being built without parking in my ward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gower, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I supported this at Planning Committee, and I'm going to support it today. I think one of the challenges I have with this one is it really reads like a 6-unit apartment building. And I do feel like the applicant in this case was taking advantage of the existing rules, bylaws that allow secondary units along with the main units. So it's, in this case, being presented as 3 townhomes with 3 secondary units. Therefore, they only require 3 parking spots minimum. Although to me, it really looks like a 6-unit apartment building with 3 parking spots. Anyhow, it's interesting, the discussion around parking in the suburbs. In Bill 23, I believe the new legislation would prevent council from requiring more than 1 parking spot in any unit anywhere in the city. So that's a big change that people should be aware of. And it's interesting, at the same time, with their changes to the official plan on Friday, they also watered down our ability as a city to require a good transit in a neighborhood before that neighborhood gets built. And to Councillor Eglai's point about the length of time before LRT arrives, I think it just underlines how important it is when we have these major transit projects in our planning documents. A transit station that may be over a decade away, we're already approving apartments and homes all across the city. We're doing it here along this LRT line. We're doing it around the future Phase 3 LRT line in Canada and Stittsville. We're doing it around corridors such as Carling Avenue and Heron Road and Baseline. We will really need as a council next term to get serious about funding these transit projects. Our official plan, two of the major goals were that we achieve more growth through intensification. That's a very good goal. And the other goal was that we have more than half of all trips in our city by 2046 being in a sustainable mode. In order to do that, we are going to have to make some serious investments in transit, and I hope we'll get the support from the provincial and the federal governments to do so as well. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Curry, please.
Thank you very much. All very good points. I'll be supporting what Councillor Egli is trying to do here. And you know what Councillor Meehan said was exactly what I heard at the doors over and over and over again. We had situations almost every street we went to in Canada where people would say, Kathy, you should see this situation when there's school buses, 4 different school buses coming down here every morning with wall-to-wall parking. And I will say to the argument that, you know, this is something that is an indication we're against infill. Well, when you have an infill apartment building, you have the opportunity to put parking, underground parking. That is an option that we can demand or create so that people can park there or store their electric cars and the parking is there. But this is an after the fact situation. So yes, we can all hope and dream that LRT will come. We see the delay till 2028 with stage 3. But that again is hope is our strategy. So I really feel that yes, this may go to the OLT and it may be overturned. However, this council, the people now and in the future, are going to have to determine what they're going to do. And if it is something that we have to pass, make a new policy, something, we're going to have to do something because this will continue. And I don't think the communities are aware of how much of this we're going to see going forward. So I am supporting Councillor Egli.
Hey, Councillor Kitts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did not support this at committee because the planning rationale pointing to the future stage 3 LRT, which is many years away and unfunded, really touched a nerve with me. As you know, you hear me talk about this all the time. The Phantom BRT in South Orleans is routinely used as a planning rationale with no path forward. So, but after I took a closer look at this site, you know, I am satisfied that there is existing transit that could take you to Algonquin College, for example, in a reasonable amount of time. And there are walkable amenities close by. So in that respect, while not perfect, I find it does differ greatly from the challenges that I'm experiencing in my community. And I have already warned my colleague I will be supporting it today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll have yays and nays on item 16.7, 25 Fair Oaks Crescent. If you support staff recommendation, vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. Deputy Clerk, please.
Conseiller Cloutier.
No.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Tierney.
No.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Yes.
Conseiller Fleury.
Oui.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Councillor Deans.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
Yes.
Councillor Curry.
No.
Councillor Shirelli.
Yes.
Councillor Egli.
No.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
No.
Councillor McKenney.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan.
No.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley. Councillor Dudas. Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Harder. Councillor DeRuse.
Yes.
Mayor Watson.
Yes.
15 yeas, 7 nays.
Okay, thank you. Next item, City Clerk summary of oral and written public submissions received. Disposition of items approved by committees under delegated authority. Received. Motion to adopt reports. Motion portant adoption de rapport. Councillor Curry, please. Seconded by Councillor Eglai.
That the Integrity Commissioner's report entitled Report to Council on an Inquiry Respecting the Conduct of Councillor Shirelli, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 35, Built Heritage Subcommittee Report 30A, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 41, Planning Committee Report 69, and the reports from the City Clerk entitled Status Update Council Inquiries, and motions for the period ending November 4th, 2022, and summary of oral and written public submissions for items subject to the Planning Act explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of October 5th, 2022, be received and adopted as amended.
On the motion, carried. Adopté. Motions of which notice have been previously given. Motion dont avis a été donné entièrement. Councillor Curry, please. Seconded by Councillor El Shantiri. I think you might be able to go just to the therefore be it resolved. Quite lengthy for a stop sign.
All right. Therefore, be it resolved that Council approve in principle the implementation of a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit on Key Rock Drive, subject to available funding as described in this motion.
Carried. Adopté. Councillor Fleury, you have a motion or a direction rather, and I believe it's replacing the motion.
Yes, correct, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to see it on the screen? I think there's flute playing here in the council chambers. That staff be directed to explore ways in which zoning amendments and heritage considerations, including heritage conservation districts where appropriate, may be used to offset the removal of exterior design and sustainable design control and other matters previously addressed through site plan control in Sandy Hill and other neighborhoods that would be affected by the proposed changes to Bill 23 through the interim measures in advance of the development of the new zoning bylaw to ensure the continued alignment with the City of Ottawa planning policies.
Okay, so with council concurrence to withdraw the motion, agreed. Direction to staff, agreed. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Councillor Hubley, seconded by Councillor Tierney. You might also want to go to the therefore be it resolved, Councillor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, which one's going first? I have two.
The three-way stop, equestrian at
Okay.
Spur.
Therefore, be it resolved that council approve the installation of a three-way stop control at the intersection of Equestrian Drive and Spur Avenue, including stop bar pavement markings, and be it further resolved that the installation of pedestrian crossing markings at the intersection of Equestrian and Spur be implemented when the intersection is able to be reconstructed in accordance with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Thank you, Mr.
I'd like
Mayor.
to mention on suspension, agreed. Agreed. On the motion by Councillor Hubley, carried.
Thank you.
Next is fireworks bylaw, Diwali celebrations, moved by Councillor Hubley, seconded by myself. Suspension of the rules, agreed. Councillor Hubley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved that the General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services consider including a review of the fireworks bylaw on the 2023 to 2026 bylaw review work plan to allow the discharge of consumer fireworks without a permit in celebration of Diwali and report findings as soon as feasible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, on the motion, carried. Councillor Fleury.
Dissent.
Sorry, there was a dissent on the fireworks by
Shirley.
Councillor Shirley. Councillor Fleury, seconded by Councillor Moffat on the appointment of an OCH community member on suspension, carried. On the motion, Councillor Fleury, please.
Mr. Mayor, are you okay if I just read the therefore be it resolved? Therefore be it resolved that Siham Rabba be appointed to the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation Board of Directors as a community member for a term effective immediately and expiring at the 2026 OCH annual general meeting. Be it further resolved that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to sign a written resolution on behalf of the City of Ottawa as shareholder of OCH, setting out the resolution approved by council.
On the motion, carried. Adopté. Next is Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor DeRuse, on winter maintenance and a portion of Bridgeport Avenue on suspension. Carried. On the item, Councillor, please. Moffat.
Thanks. I could tell you a long story here, but no one cares. So the motion is therefore be it resolved that council approve an exception to section 5.1 of the council expense policy to allow for the continued maintenance of this section of Bridgeport Avenue for the 2022-2023 winter maintenance season to be funded from the outgoing councillor, that's me, portion of the 2022 constituency services budgets. If you want to know more about it, just come meet me on Bridgeport. We can walk around and talk about it. I have a lot of free time coming up.
All right, on the motion, carried. Next is Councillor Brockington, seconded by Councillor Leeper with respect to funding of an adult crossing guard from the Ward 16 office budget on suspension. Carried. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is a continuation. I did bring a motion to council last September. Council supported this. Thank you. And I could only spend money up to the end of this term of council. I could not commit funds going into the next term of council. So before the term ends, I wanted to bring this motion back. So I just wanted to read the therefore clause. Be it resolved that council approve an exemption to section 5.1 of the council expense policy to permit Councillor Brockington to fund an adult crossing guard at Anna Avenue at Maryville from the Ward 16 constituency services budget for the 2022-2023 school year, or via another funding source identified as part of the 2023 budget process, and until such time that traffic services determines the intersection meets the related warrants and that funding becomes available through its adult school crossing guard program. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, on the motion, carried. Notices of motion for consideration of subsequent meeting. Avis de motion pour examen réunion subséquente. Motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Curry. Yeah, we have to introduce it first. Motion to introduce bylaws, Councillor Curry, seconded by Councillor Eglai.
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings, be read and passed.
So Councillor Fleury wishes to deal with 2 items here. Councillor, you have 2 motions.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. I'd love, so I wish to sever the bylaw listed as bylaw E on the agenda titled a bylaw of the City of Ottawa to designate certain lands on Montreal Road, Rue Montfort, and Saint-Anne, Plan 246 as being exempt from part law control. Do you want me to explain the rationale?
Well, I think what you should do is introduce both because, well, I'm going to ask legal what the requirement is to deal with these.
Okay, I'd still like, if there is a vote, for them to be separate, if you...
yeah, no, we'll separate.
Yeah. And then the other bylaw I'd love to sever is bylaw FF on the agenda, which is titled a bylaw of the City of Ottawa to amend bylaw number 2008250 to remove the holding symbol from the lands known municipally as 325, 327, 333 Montreal Road, 333 Montfort Street, and 273 Saint-Anne. And again, could provide some additional rationale.
Okay, so Mr. Mark, with respect to item FF, what is the threshold to lift a bylaw? My understanding is it's not a simple majority.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The procedure bylaw, section 70, subsection 5, provides that bylaws are to be adopted in bulk, that is, as a group, unless the mayor is satisfied that the subject matter of the bylaw has not been previously adopted in a report to council. So if I can speak first to bylaw FF, which is a lifting of a holding zone, that topic was, in my opinion, subject of a report to council. It was in the recommendations adopted by council on November 22nd, 2017, specifically item 2B on the 325 Montreal Road item, which specifically referred to the holding provision. Therefore, in my opinion, it requires a 3/4 suspension of the rules, a 3/4 vote. I simply note that in my experience since the beginning of the amalgamated City of Ottawa in January 2001, no holding bylaw has ever been lifted from the bulk consent agenda for bylaws, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we'll have to have a vote on whether to lift FF. 3/4 required. I encourage members to not lift this. It's had full discussion. So yays and nays on.
Mr. Mayor, just is it possible to just at least members don't know why I would be lifting? Is it possible to just explain the rationale to? It's not a long thing. It's a 1 minute.
Yeah, I was just wondering does this go right to a vote, Mr.
Mr. Mayor, suspension is a debatable motion.
Okay.
So would you like me, I want to keep quorum. I want to be fair to members here. So would you like me to address both in one?
Good, sure.
Yeah. Members of council, you know that this is a tough matter, that there's disagreement around this table, and we don't need to go into details around that. There are two areas. One is the part lot. Last, when I met with staff through the site plan process, there was a staff comment that there would be a requirement to go to the Committee of Adjustment, which the community association saw as an area to engage on the particular matter. It is now not through the Committee of Adjustment, which would engage my community. So for me, it's just what staff inform my community of relating to the Committee of Adjustment is a different process now. So I'm seeking to have what was committed to my community. So I believe the way to do it would either be a motion to send it to Committee of Adjustment or a motion for Planning Committee to look at it next term. On the other matter, so there is a holding provision which was created by the council that was at this table in 2014. This was on the zoning. So when we reviewed the zoning for that matter, there was a holding provision that was added that looked at two matters: a safety plan and an outreach program. And no documents were shared with me relating to why the holding provision needed to be removed. I met with staff in September when they were looking to add it to the agenda, and sought additional information, which was, as you saw by the email to colleagues yesterday, was not provided. So I think for public disclosure as to why that holding provision was released, that I think it should be referred to Planning Committee so that staff can prepare a report as to how the documentation was prepared for the release of the holding provision. So, Mr. Mayor, that's the two reasons why I'm seeking, I guess, referral procedurally.
Well, the first item is we have to see if council wants to lift the item from the bylaws. So if you want to lift this item and have this debate, you vote yes. If not, you vote no.
Chair, just quickly, I believe the motion is relatively complex. Could it just be distributed and give us 5 minutes to read it again?
Sorry, the motion that's in front of us?
Yeah, the motion on which we're debating whether or not to.
4 paragraphs.
Sorry?
It's 4 paragraphs.
Can it be distributed? We've seen it once on screen.
We'll put it on the screen for you.
Thank you.
If I could ask staff to put the motion, Mr. Mayor, if I may clarify?
Yeah.
There is no motion before council, as council has not yet voted on whether to lift the bylaw to which those motions pertain.
Right. So we have to do that first. That's why I mentioned we should be calling yays and nays on lifting it, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So we can't discuss it until it's been lifted. So yays and nays on lifting. If you want to have this debate, yes. If not, no.
Conseil Cloutier.
No.
Councillor Kitts.
No.
Councillor Gower.
No.
Councillor Tierney.
No.
Councillor El Shantiri.
No.
Conseil Fleury. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Councillor Deans.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
Yes.
Councillor Curry.
No.
Councillor Shirelli.
Yes.
Councillor Eglai.
No.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
No.
Councillor McKenney.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan.
Yes.
Councillor Moffat.
No.
Councillor Hubley. Councillor Dudas, Councillor Brockington,
Yes.
Councillor Harder, Councillor DeRuse,
No.
Mayor Watson,
No?
10 yeas, 12 nays.
Okay, so that's not lifted. Next item, Councillor Fleury and King on bylaw E. To lift this, Mr. Sorry, no, I'm going to ask the lawyer, our lawyer, Mr. Barr.
So Mr.
My
Mayor,
understanding is this would require a simple majority.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I reviewed the record on this one. I cannot find that the part lot control matter was discussed in a council report, and therefore it would be subject to severance by a simple majority vote. I simply note again that since January 1, 2001, no part lot control bylaw, and there are several on every council agenda. No part lot control bylaw has ever been lifted from the bulk consent bylaw agenda.
So with the will of council, the same vote? Agreed? Okay, thank you. So on Councillor Curry's motion, seconded by Councillor Eglai. Yeah.
Just, this is, again, so simple majority, so the vote was?
Mr. Mayor, the vote was 10 yeas, 12 nays.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on the Curry-Eglai motion, carried, adopté. Confirmation bylaw, règlement de ratification, Councillor Curry, seconded by Councillor Eglai.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of November 9th, 2022.
On the motion, carried, adopté. Inquiries, we have one written inquiry from Councillor Brockington.
Just on other business, is there another business item or on inquiries? I just wanted to raise, Mayor, we have outgoing councillors here. And I think it would be helpful if we gave the opportunity for outgoing councillors, if they wanted to, if they wanted to say a few words at the last council meeting here. And so you could ask them if they would want to, but I think it would be helpful for the public to hear from outgoing councillors if they would like to speak.
Yep, sure. We'll just have to deal with Councillor Brockington first.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just inquiry, just a table. So last week on November 2nd, a 70-year-old pedestrian was fatally struck by two vehicles while crossing Marival near Thames Road. This is actually a block away from the crossing guard that we just approved. This tragic and preventable death has renewed calls within the Carlington community to advance a complete street design and construction for Marival Road from at least the residential and commercial stretch of Marival from Kirkwood to Carling. Question, what are the timelines to complete a complete street for Marival Road? Despite a chronic request from the public and local councillors for speed enforcement by the Ottawa Police Services, no consistent presence and enforcement is undertaken. Question, will the OPS commit to significantly increasing their presence on Marival Road to enforce speeds, given that the neighborhood response team assigned to Carlington has a traffic resource? Other questions, what funding sources exist to assist with the added initiatives regarding the beautification of the street as well as physical enhancements to improve the pedestrian and cyclist experience, particularly with a safety lens applied? Will staff commit to reviewing the length of time it takes for the traffic light to change at Marival and Coldry once a pedestrian has pushed the call button? And will staff commit to reviewing the physical layout of Marival Road southbound immediately following the bend in the street approximately 100 meters south of Carling? Traffic comes around this corner way too fast. How can the immediate area along Marival be improved to increase safety for all road users, but particularly for vulnerable road users? Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leeper has a item with the concurrence of council with respect to demolition control. It's just come about. So, Councillor, if you'd like to introduce.
Thank you, and I apologize to the clerk staff. My staff have just made me aware of this. We're not going to meet again as a council for a while, so I'm seeking to bring a motion of demolition control that would be seconded by Councillor King for an address. You want to do waiver first?
Do we have the address?
Pardon?
Do we have the address?
Yeah. So, sorry, I thought you might want to do waiver first. So this is with respect to properties.
Sorry, on waiver. Agreed. Carried. Okay.
So this is a fairly standard waiver of demolition control for 332 Clifton Road. The developer has agreed to pay all the necessary fees, so it is a standard notice. Do you want me to read the whole thing? And I'm gonna.
Yeah, if you can just therefore be it resolved.
So therefore be it resolved, and I apologize, I'll send it to the clerk's office momentarily. Therefore be it resolved that council approve demolition control for the existing buildings on the property subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner pay PRED $3,518.40, includes the $420 legal fee plus HST, which is the fee associated with the demolition control application. Two, that until the commencement of any excavation and above grade construction, the owner shall landscape the property with grass and sod landscaping to the satisfaction of the general manager, planning, real estate, and economic development, and that said landscaping shall be maintained by the owner. Three, that until the time of the construction of the replacement building, the owner be required to provide a permanent decorative fence to be installed around the perimeter of the property to the satisfaction of the general manager, planning, real estate, and economic development. Four, the owner acknowledges and agrees that any trees to be removed shall be removed in accordance with an approved tree permit and tree conservation report, and in accordance with the city's tree protection bylaw, being bylaw 2023-40 as amended. The owner further acknowledges and agrees to post on the property the approved tree permit at all times during tree removal, grading, construction, and any other site alteration activities. Five, the owner shall prohibit the use of the property for any other interim uses and maintain the property in accordance with the property standards bylaw. Six, the owner agrees that a replacement building shall be substantially completed within 5 years from the date of this approval, and in default thereof, the city clerk shall enter on the collector's roll the sum of $31,570 for the 3 residential dwelling units to be demolished. The owner shall enter into an agreement with the City of Ottawa to include the foregoing conditions and pay all costs associated with the registration of said agreement. At such time as a building permit is issued to redevelop the site and replacement buildings in place, the agreement will become null and void and will be released upon request of the owner. The owner shall pay all costs associated with the release of the agreement. 8, the owner agrees that a demolition permit will not be issued and the building cannot be demolished until such time that the agreement is referenced herein has been executed and registered on title. 9, this approval is considered null and void if the agreement is not executed within 6 months of council's approval. Thank you, Chair. Apologies again. Thank you for your indulgence.
Councillor Leeper, questions or comments? Carried. Adopté. Councillor, or Deputy Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, if I may indulge council, we'll need to readopt the confirmation bylaw to ensure that that motion is properly adopted.
Carried. Okay. As you may know, the city manager and I are hosting a lunch for our outgoing colleagues and a presentation, but members of council would like to also address those that are leaving. Anyone just throw your hand up? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Deans.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I think it's appropriate, actually, that members of council have an opportunity in a public forum to say a proper goodbye after, well, somebody like me being here for 20
Get closer to the mic.
years. Actually, I never dreamed when I walked into council chamber, which at the time was on Sussex Drive, that I'd be here for 28 years. But I also don't think I really got this job. I didn't get the passion that we developed for a city. I don't think I understood exactly how much a member of council can do in terms of changing lives and setting a new direction for a city and being so involved in the life of the city. And that it's really my jam. I really enjoyed every day here. And I think I owe a debt of gratitude to a lot of people that gave me that opportunity to do that. And I have to say, it hasn't all been fun. In fact, you know, there's the joy of victory. There's also the agony of defeat. And I suffered a few of those along the way. But I'm not going to concentrate too much on that. We certainly, you know, saw our share of tragedy in this council chamber, and we weathered a lot of storms together, both literally and figuratively. And I have to say that those were low points for me, and so were the personal animosity that really reached a crescendo at this term of council. But I'm not going to focus on that today. I also want to say that there was a lot of great times here over all these years. And I mean, one of them that I remember most fondly is the day that Councillor El Shantiri and I turned this council chamber into a rollicking scene from Greece, where we kicked off the United Way campaign that we were co-chairing that year. And I just have to say, Councillor El Shantiri has no rhythm and he can't dance. And that might be something to take up in retirement, Councillor El Shantiri. A few dance lessons wouldn't hurt. But seriously, I do think that Councillor El Shantiri and I hold the record for the most money ever raised on Councillors' Road for United Way. So something for the new councillors to try and unseat that title. You know, I think that as a council, there were also a lot of successes for all of us. I mean, those of us who were here long enough to remember the smoke-free bylaws know that we were the first municipality in North America to bring in smoke-free bylaws. We charted the course for a lot of councils across North America, and I think we saved countless lives. I was also on the first council that considered bringing LRT to Ottawa, and although we've had a few hiccups, it's maybe not running perfectly, I still am really proud that we brought LRT because I think it's a game changer to Ottawa, and I think it's something great that this council did. I mean, in my own ward, I have lots of successes. I managed to get the first district library in the chain, the Greenboro Community Center, the Greenboro District Library. And I mean, I have to admit it took 12 years to get it, but and I think that my colleagues maybe voted for that as much to silence me about it as they did for more noble reasons. But nonetheless, maybe a message to new councillors: persistence pays off. So be persistent when need be. But I also saw the expansion of the Greenboro Community Center. I saw the building better, revitalizing neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods, the community kitchen. I fought the city's disposal of surplus land policy and managed to keep an old works yard in Hetherington. And today I'm so proud that there stands on that site a Boys and Girls Club, because in low-income communities that are really dense, you need those public spaces. And I'm proud that I managed to do that. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to say a lot of thanks to a lot of people, my staff over 28 years who, we did all of it together. This is a team sport. It's not an individual thing, and your successes are shared successes. And I wanted to say a special thanks to city staff that are really unsung heroes in this community, that work hard every day to make the quality of life in our neighborhoods so important, and to the senior staff who carry a heavy burden. Thank you all for the work that you do. To my council colleagues, past and present, it's been a ride. It's been quite the thing to work with all of you and a lot of others along the way, and I've appreciated that. And to the citizens of Ottawa, many have written to me. I really hold you all dear in my heart, and especially the good people of Gloucester Southgate Ward who sent me here, who believed in me and who trusted me to be their representative for 28 years. I've really appreciated the faith and the trust they put in me, and I hope I earned it every single day. So people ask me what I'm going to do, and I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But this is the end of a long chapter and hopefully the beginning of an exciting new one. To the new council, I just want to say to all of you, this is a great opportunity. Make the most of it. Work with your colleagues. You're all stronger when you work together. And I wish you all the best to continue to build and grow this great city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shirelli.
Thank you, Your Worship. It has been my honor and privilege to serve as the elected representative for College Ward since amalgamation at the City of Ottawa, and before that as your city councillor in the City of Nepean. As early as elementary school, I was enthralled with politics and read up and watched and worked with many local politicians, as many as I could. In the early 1980s, while still a teenager, I was elected to the Carleton Catholic School Board and became the youngest person ever elected in Ontario. I never expected that my passion for politics would lead to such a wonderful vocation. Over the more than 30 years I have been in public life, I have always strived to help each constituent to the best of my ability and to provide oversight on important city initiatives. Looking back, I'm very proud of the connections I made with individuals in our city, and I'm glad as part of many vital improvements, fun activities, and community building events. I always took my role as guardian of your tax dollars very seriously. In my position as chair of audit committee, I encouraged the creation of the Auditor General position for the City of Ottawa to help find savings in the city. I questioned the City of Ottawa's partnership in Plasco and Orga World. Audits later proved that these partnerships have been ill-advised moves. I demanded and
Councillor Shirley, unfortunately, we've lost quorum.
They intentionally all left the table. Keep going. Okay, go finish.
Okay, can I keep going?
Yeah, keep going. Just keep going. Keep going.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we can't proceed if we don't have quorum, Councillor.
Just keep talking. Yeah. Thank everybody.
Well, actually, I think the rule is I can keep proceeding. We just can't legislate based on this.
Sorry, we don't have quorum. So until we have quorum, we won't be able to proceed. Yeah. Can we adjourn? Yeah. And can we adjourn, Deputy Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, should quorum not be resuming, the meeting can stand adjourned until the next regularly scheduled council meeting, or as the case may be, a time to be determined by the incoming mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, carried. Adopté? Carried. Thank you. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned. And we welcome our councillors and their guests to the luncheon where we'll be able to hear from Councillor Egli and Councillor Cloutier. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.